Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, is the third leading cause of death in the United States, so it's a large epidemic, and we really started out to understand geographic disparities faced by those with COPD. And we wanted to understand the burden of COPD faced by those in rural communities who are often understudied. And in our study, using a large nationally representative data set, we were able to show that people living in rural areas, even after adjusting for traditional risk factors such as smoking and poverty, were twice as likely to have COPD as their counterparts in urban areas. We also showed amongst people without a smoking history that environmental pollution from the burning of solid fuels such as wood contributed to the burden of COPD. And we think this is important because these environmental exposures are more common in rural areas. Using objective lung function data, that people living in rural areas will often have lower lung function, they'll have more respiratory symptoms. And I think this can emphasize enough the importance of building partnerships across communities to help deal with this epidemic. And because we can't wait for infrastructure to be changed completely, but we can build partnerships with rural areas to help build programs to address the burden of rural COPD in these communities. And us at Johns Hopkins, we built a partnership in a community in Central Appalachia and the Eastern Tennessee State University to help better study this epidemic. We're also reaching out to communities in Western Maryland to help study the epidemic of rural COPD more and understand how the environment may contribute to the disease development in a unique way. Rural areas often face certain issues. One is, obviously, smoking is often more common in these areas. The other thing we often consider is different sources of environmental pollution, whether it be from agricultural sources or others. But one thing that's even more common is, as well as air pollution exposure, which brings all these things together. And significant sources are that from the heating of fuels such as coal or wood, which contribute a lot to dust that can contribute to the burden of lung disease that they face. There needs to be more work done to study the effects of pollutants from these sources and their contributions to COPD. Ultimately, we recommend heating from traditional electric and gas sources that are less likely to produce pollutants that contribute to COPD.